Most people think power in America is loud. Elections, rallies, presidents, billionaires with their names in headlines. But the most decisive forces in this country don't campaign, don't speak publicly, and don't want to be known at all. Tonight, we're stepping away from Donald Trump, the man, and looking at the invisible architecture behind him, the private dynasty whose influence never shows up on ballots, yet repeatedly intersects with moments that change the direction of the nation. This isn't conspiracy, and it isn't celebrity gossip. It's about money, access, defense contracts, and political leverage operating far from public view. By the end of this video, you'll see the exact pressure point in 2016 where this family's quiet involvement shifted outcomes without ever taking credit. If you want to understand how real power actually works in America, not how it's sold to you, like this video and subscribe to Zenith and stay with us. The Astor Empire. This empire represents a kind of American power that predates politics, media, and modern billionaires. Long before New York became a global financial capital, the Astors quietly positioned themselves as its invisible landlords. John Jacob Astor built the foundation of the dynasty not through spectacle, but through land, acquiring parcels, locking in long-term leases, and creating a real estate system designed to survive centuries. Today, much of their estimated $140 billion fortune is buried inside private trusts and layered entities, deliberately shielded from public view. Entire sections of Manhattan still sit on Astor-controlled land, and for generations, anyone attempting to rise in New York real estate had to operate within rules the Astors wrote. Donald Trump wanted prominence in that world, but the Astors were born into it. Their wealth wasn't designed to impress, it was designed to endure. Even now, legacy holdings continue to generate tens of millions annually, and if you trace the terrain Trump had to navigate as a developer, you inevitably circle back to the old money ecosystem the Astors built long before his name ever appeared on a tower. The Bundy Dynasty. If the Astors mastered land, the Bundy Dynasty mastered something far less visible and far more dangerous: national security influence. For decades, the Bundys have operated inside the sealed corridors of intelligence, defense, and military policy, where decisions are made long before the public ever hears about them. Their wealth, estimated around $500 million, understates their reach. Through private equity vehicles and defense-linked shell companies, their interests touch missile systems, surveillance architecture, and classified aerospace projects where contracts can reshape budgets overnight. Their properties reflect that reality: discrete estates in Washington configured for secure communications, and a Martha's Vineyard compound housing private archives of Cold War intelligence materials. But the Bundys' real strength isn't financial, it's placement. Across generations, family members and protégés have occupied advisory roles, defense boards, and intelligence-adjacent positions that persist regardless of which administration holds power. Presidents change, defense budgets do not, and the Bundys remain embedded where those decisions are made. The Mellon Dynasty. Operating far from spectacle but deep inside the machinery of the American state, the Mellon family represents power concentrated in finance, industry, and government design. Their fortune was built through banking, aluminum, oil, and war-era production, then converted into something more durable: institutional control. Through treasury leadership, central banking influence, and interlocking trusts, the Mellons helped shape tax policy, monetary systems, and the rules governing corporate power itself. Their assets were never meant to be flashy. They were embedded into universities, foundations, and regulatory pipelines that train and filter future decision-makers. Influence compounds through structure, not publicity. Family capital routed into defense-adjacent manufacturing, global finance, and policy networks that survive every election cycle. The result is quiet leverage over how money moves, how industries are regulated, and which sectors receive long-term protection. Where others chase contracts, the Mellons shape the framework that decides who gets them. The Kennedy Dynasty. This dynasty, by contrast, represents power that learned how to live in full view without losing control. Built on Joseph P. Kennedy's early fortune in shipping, media, and industry, the family perfected the fusion of wealth, politics, and public narrative. Their financial engine funded decades of political ambition, producing presidents, senators, ambassadors, and policy architects whose influence extended far beyond election cycles. The Kennedy compound in Hyannisport became both symbol and command center, a place where campaigns were shaped, alliances formed, and American political mythology reinforced. Trust networks funneled capital into campaigns, media, and philanthropic institutions, ensuring the Kennedy worldview echoed through debates on civil rights, healthcare, and foreign policy. Even outside government, their business interests in pharmaceuticals, shipping, and media continue to exert influence. The Kennedys didn't just accumulate wealth, they mastered visibility as a weapon, creating a legacy so embedded in American consciousness that it still shapes the environment. Modern political figures, including Trump, must operate within the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. For more than a century, the global financial system has been shaped by two families whose influence predates modern politics itself, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Their power did not come from elections or public office, but from designing financial infrastructure that governments are forced to operate within. John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil once controlled nearly 90% of U.S. oil production, creating a fortune that would exceed $400 billion in today's terms. Rather than preserving that wealth through inheritance alone, the Rockefellers converted it into permanent institutions. Major banks, universities, medical research centers, global health organizations, and policy foundations. These were not acts of charity in the modern sense, but strategic placements that shaped regulation, education, and economic priorities for generations. Across the Atlantic, the Rothschild family built Europe's banking backbone by establishing interconnected financial houses across London, Paris, Vienna, and Frankfurt, enabling governments to finance wars, infrastructure, and expansion long before central banking as we know it existed. Today, their wealth is dispersed across private trusts, energy holdings, mineral assets, and advisory roles connected to central banks and international monetary institutions. While estimates vary wildly, their true power lies less in numbers than in continuity. Independently formidable, together their overlapping interests in banking, energy, and capital flow helped construct the framework modern presidents, including Trump, must navigate rather than control. The Russells. If the Rockefeller-Rothschild axis represents structural finance, the Russell network represents structural access. Emerging from elite academic institutions rather than balance sheets, this network traces back to Skull and Bones, founded at Yale in 1832 by members of the Russell family. Over generations, it produced a disproportionate number of intelligence directors, defense officials, diplomats, financiers, and policy architects. Its influence does not function through public advocacy or wealth displays, but through placement. Graduates embedded inside intelligence agencies, military advisory boards, legal institutions, and regulatory bodies. Membership was never symbolic. It functioned as a lifelong network, granting accelerated access to decision-making corridors closed to outsiders. While their financial assets are modest compared to industrial dynasties, their leverage lies in continuity. Administrations change, elections swing, but the same institutional pathways remain occupied by individuals drawn from the same elite pipeline. Even political outsiders must operate inside environments shaped by these gatekeepers long before campaigns begin. The Vanderbilt family. The most controversial narratives emerge around families accused of operating even further from visibility, such as the Vanderbilt lineage often referenced in speculative financial analysis rather than verified reporting. Unlike historic American dynasties tied to public corporations or philanthropy, these accounts describe wealth dispersed across European trusts, offshore banking jurisdictions, and private advisory roles within energy and data infrastructure. Analysts who advance these theories argue that influence in the modern era no longer requires direct ownership or political endorsements, but strategic investment in information systems, behavioral research, and digital infrastructure. In this framework, political figures are not controlled, but leveraged, benefiting from momentum created by decentralized media ecosystems rather than formal campaign funding. While such claims remain debated and largely unproven, they reflect a broader reality of modern power. Outcomes are increasingly shaped through systems that operate parallel to elections, not through them. Whether mythologized or grounded in fragments of truth, these narratives persist because they mirror a structural shift, where influence flows through data, finance, and institutional continuity rather than public authority. What unites all these dynasties is not secrecy for its own sake, but design. Land, capital, institutions, access, and information placed deliberately to outlast individual leaders. Presidents rise and fall within these systems, but rarely outside them. To understand modern power is not to follow personalities, but to trace the structures beneath them, the ones that remain long after campaigns end and headlines fade. What this really shows is that power in the modern world doesn't belong to the loudest voices or the most visible figures. It belongs to the systems that were built long before elections, long before media cycles, and long before any single president took office. Families and networks that design financial structures, institutional access, and information pipelines don't need attention to win. They simply endure. If you want to keep uncovering how real influence operates beneath the surface of politics, wealth, and history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Zenith. We break down the structures that shape the world, not the stories you're meant to be distracted by.